right, welcome back to From A to Arbitration. Today we're going to be dealing with discipline. And this episode is going to cover what we do when a carrier hands us discipline that they've received from management. In episodes upcoming, we'll be talking about different aspects of Article 16, but this one's just going to be handling or dealing with discipline and what we do. A carrier comes up to you on the workroom floor and they say, hey, management has just handed me this. I want to file a grievance. And you look and it's a letter warning, 7-day, 14-day removal. And the first thing I tell all of my carriers is to sign discipline, to sign it when you received it. I want them to do that because we have caught management in the past, and it's happening around our region, where management, if you constantly refuse to sign discipline, management will just start putting discipline in your file, saying you refuse to sign it, and they'll cite that against you. And then when you get a request for action or request for disciplinary action, they'll cite on there a letter warning that we've never seen and the carrier never received. So always have the carrier sign the disciplinary notice. That's not an admission of guilt. It's just an admission of when I got it. And when you got it, then we know when our 14 days starts. If you go to Article 15, page 15.2, it states under time limits, this is what it states. The 14 days for filing a grievance at informal step A begins the day after the occurrence or the day after the grievant or the union may reasonably have been expected to have learned of the occurrence. For example, if a grievant receives a letter of warning, day 1 of the 14 days is the day after the letter of warning is received. So it's critical that they sign that disciplinary notice so we'll know when our 14-day starts. The very first thing that we do when we receive a disciplinary notice, whatever it is, the very first thing we do is not to file a grievance. That's not the first thing we do. We have a terrible history of getting a letter of warning or a 7-day or 14-day removal, and we immediately file a grievance. We're killing ourselves when we do that. Take advantage of every day of that 14 days. When I was the formal A rep for my installation, it never failed. And it didn't matter how many times I would call the stewards and tell them to quit doing this. It's like they were scared to death that they were going to run out of time on the first day. And they would file a grievance the day after the discipline was issued. So I would get in the grievance file the 8190, the letter of discipline, whatever it was, and then a request for information with no information. So now my 21 days has turned into 7 days because I've wasted the 14 days that I could have used to prepare this grievance. Now I'm cut down to 7 days that I've got to meet at the formal A. So make sure that we are taking advantage of the 14 days as prescribed in Article 15. The very first thing that we do when we receive discipline is immediately put in a request for information. When I turn in a request for information, I don't put 1,000 things that I want, that I see, that I need. I don't do that initially. The very first thing I request is I want to know what management used to issue this discipline. So that's what I'm going to ask for. Any and all information that management used to issue this discipline to Carrier Corey Walton. That's what I want. Because if I'm looking at this discipline and I'm in my mind, I'm jotting down, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. Management may not have thought of that. And so your help putting arrows in their quiver. Don't do that. So ask for what they used initially. When you get that, document that. They gave me 10 pages. These are the 10 pages that they gave me that they relied on to issue this discipline. That way, now I'm going to request additional information that I see could be relevant. They can't say that that's what they've used because they didn't give that to you initially. So they can't use it to support their position because they didn't use that to issue the discipline. You've already got what they used to issue the discipline. So I hope that's making sense. So initially ask for any and all information that management used to issue the discipline. Then we'll get that. One thing that is critical that is left out of a lot of case files on suspensions or removals is the request for appropriate action, or the request for discipline, or whatever your region calls it. That there's a lot that we can learn from a request for action. So make sure that if you don't get that in the initial information request, that you ask for that specifically, okay? So on that request for action, you'll have a discussion date. Most of the times those are always wrong. You'll have previous discipline, and that'll let you know what they're using against this carrier. And we can say then, have we ever, they're listing the letter of warning. Well, I don't ever remember a letter of warning being issued. We can look for that. Ask for that letter of warning. Is it something that they have falsified and put in this file? We can address that at that time, because once it's arbitration, it's impossible or almost impossible to bring that out. Arbitrators are leery about letting new argument in. So we'll look at concurrence on a request for action. Is there any? Who did it? Are they higher level? Is it the manager that issued the discipline? Did they concur on it? There's a lot of arguments we can make out of those things. And I'll get into that later on in another episode on 16.8 concurrence. But so get that initial request for information in there, everything that management used, and then we'll start looking at the information that they used, and then comes our homework. And always remember, discipline is like an iceberg. When you get management's position and the discipline, you're seeing about 10% of the story. We're going to find that extra 90%. That iceberg, when you see it, you're looking at about 10%. The rest of it's underneath the water, right? About 90% of that thing. So that's discipline. You're going to catch about 10% of the story from management, what they want somebody on the outside to see. We're going to find that other 90%, and we do that through information. Don't be lazy. The discipline is the most important grievance you'll file. It's the most important thing we'll battle, because this is the process with which a carrier is going to be removed. So there's nothing more important. Article 8s are not important as this. Holiday scheduling is not important as this. Opting is not as important as this. Treat discipline like it is. It's the most important grievance we will file. So when we research these things, when we study these things, when you get into that case file and start looking, pay close attention to those things. Dates, all of those things are critical. Is management story making sense? Talk to the carrier on information that you receive. Y'all go over that together. A lot of times the carrier will be able to help you. They'll say, this isn't true. This isn't true. That's not happened. Well, give me a statement to that effect. Help me out here. Another thing, postal inspector's reports and an OIG report. When you get that, if it's part of management's disciplinary packet, hand that to the letter carrier and tell them, go over this and tell me what's not accurate. We've got to start doing that. We've got to. Too many times when, as an advocate, I'll get a postal inspector's report and it's not coinciding with the other information in the file. We've never talked to the carrier about it. So I'll call the carrier and I'll say, hey, the postal inspector said this. Well, no, that didn't happen. Well, they're stating right here that you said this. Well, I never said that. Well, it's at arbitration now, so it's almost too late. Do those things at the ground level. When you get an OIG report or a postal inspector's report, hand that to the letter carrier and let them go over that. If you were sitting in during that interview, you go over it word for word and pick out the discrepancies in that, because there will be discrepancies. So again, when we get discipline, we have 14 days from the date after that carrier received it. Turn in your information request. Request any and all information that management used to issue the discipline. Get that, and then we'll start getting other information. Another thing is, get your little group of carriers that you trust, formal A's, other stewards. I see on social media, on Facebook, and I pull my hair out, even though I have no hair. I pull what little hair I do have out when I see the responses to people saying, hey, here's this discipline I received. How would y'all beat it? The responses I see are unbelievable. It's a hindrance. Most are just sarcastic comments against the manager. That doesn't help anybody. So get you a core group of carriers, stewards, formal A's, even the business agent if you're stumped, and run those things around, because more eyes on it, the better. More things that they'll be able to say, hey, look, right here, request this report, because that's going to help you show this, whether it's scanning, it's attendance, accidents, all of those things, and go over it with a fine-tooth comb to help that carrier out. There's nothing more important that you'll do than discipline. And so treat it as such. And always remember, the more we request initially, the more we help management. So stay away from that. Again, request the basics at the beginning, and then we'll broaden our request as time goes on. And so hopefully this helps you out about discipline and what to request. And then in future episodes, we'll talk about just cause and things like that, corrective rather than punitive. But this is the groundwork on when you receive discipline, what we want to request, and when are we going to request it. Okay? So hopefully this helped, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Thank you.